Hi guys, it's Tony Robbins. You're listening to Habits and Hustle. Crush it.
Today on Habits and Hustle, we have Dan Buettner. Dan is an explorer, National Geographic Fellow, an award-winning journalist, and of course, a multi New York Times bestselling author. He discovered the 5 places in the world dubbed Blue Zones hotspots where people live the longest, healthiest lives. Dan now works in partnerships with municipal governments, large employers, and health insurance companies to implement Blue Zone projects in communities, workplace, and universities around the world. His books, The Blue Zones, Lessons for Living Longer from the People Who's Lived the Longest, his cookbooks, and of course his newest book, which is The Blue Zone Challenge, have all been #1 on the New York Times. He has appeared on the Today Show, Oprah, NBC Nightly News, Good Morning America, and has keynoted speeches for TED, Bill Clinton's Health Matters initiatives, Google, and on and on and on. In fact, his speech for the Economic Forum in Davos was chosen as one of the best of Davos. Buettner also holds a 3-time Guinness World Book record for distance cycling. I am so excited to be sharing this interview with you guys. Dan is not only super interesting, but his information on longevity is really, really impactful. And what's best, you don't need any quick fixes to actually implement these very practical solutions. Enjoy. Thank you so much for being so patient. Today we have Dan Buettner. I said it correctly, yeah?
You got it.
Thank you. On the podcast. And if for those of you who don't know who he is, he wrote, and his whole brand and identity, I feel like now is all about the Blue Zones. It's all about longevity. So if you're interested in living until 100 or more, then this is the podcast you need to listen to. And Dan, thank you so much for being on. He is amazing. He is an explorer. He is a Guinness World Book record holder for for cycling, I think it is, yeah? And he has an extraordinary background and he's amazing. So thank you for being on.
My pleasure.
And he's also very patient because, we had some technical snafus. So I guess I'd like to start this podcast by really starting from the beginning, which is, can you just tell everybody what the Blue Zones is?
Yeah, it's about 20 years ago, we had the idea of trying to reverse engineer longevity. So instead of trying to look for the secret to living longer in a petri dish or a test tube, I teamed up with National Geographic and we got funding from the National Institutes on Aging to hire demographers. And these are population experts to go through 190 countries, population data, to find areas where people are living statistically longest. So these are places where people either have the highest life expectancy, the lowest rate of middle-age mortality, which that means they have the best chance of hitting 95, or the highest concentration of centenarians, 100-year-olds. And we found 5 of them. And because these are places that have achieved the outcomes we want, they lived a long time without chronic disease, and they have an average set of genes. They're not any better than you or me or anybody listening right now. They're part of a melting pot of people. We know they're doing something, or we know there's something about their environment that is producing extraordinary longevity. And that means these people are living about 10 years longer than the rest of us. And that's the potential that we're missing, quite frankly, in this country.
Right. So let's go with, can you just name what those are? And then I want to break down what they're doing, their habits, and then go into what we're doing wrong and how we can fix it.
Yeah, so the 5 Blue Zones are longest lived women in Okinawa, Japan, longest lived men in the highlands of Sardinia. Our friend Darren Olean had been there. Mm-hmm. Nicoya Peninsula, Costa Rica, we have a population that has about a 3-fold better chance of reaching a healthy age 95, and they achieve that spending about 1/15 the amount we do on healthcare. An island in the Aegean Sea called Ikaria, where people are living 8 years longer, but they're not suffering from dementia. And then in the United States, it's among the Seventh-day Adventists in and around Loma Linda, California.
That's so interesting. So then is there like a through line just from those 5 blue zones that everyone's doing? Or because I watched your TED Talk, I watched all your interviews in your books, and there's different habits and different like tweaks that each place is doing, which we'll get into. But is there any through lines that all of these places are all doing?
Yes.
Okay.
They're all eating mostly a whole food, plant-based diet. So the 4 pillars of every longevity diet in the world are whole grains. Flies right in the face of all this paranoia around grains. And they're eating wheat, rice, and corn, but whole grain, not the stripped down simple stuff. Greens, as many as 60 or 70 different types of greens, including fennel tops and dandelions. Nuts, and then the cornerstone of every longevity diet in the world is beans. So that's mostly, they do eat meat, but fewer than 5 times a month. But they have vocabulary for purpose. They have sacred daily rituals to help reduce the stress of everyday living and the inflammation. They have strategies to keep from overeating, the way they set up their homes.
I love that part. I want to talk about that. That's amazing.
They tend to belong to a faith. Almost all of them belong and show up. They put their family first. Above their career. And they all have really great close social circles. There's actually vocabulary for that too. In Okinawa, they call it a moai, or a group of friends with whom they travel through life. And these friends tend to have the right behaviors and support the right living for decades.
What I find also so interesting, and why I really wanted to talk to you, beyond obviously the obvious reasons, was all these misconceptions of, I feel like me coming from the wellness background, health and fitness, like we spoke about, it's a bigger market than ever before. Every single day there's a new wellness thing, a smart tech thing, a product, a supplement, and we are literally getting sicker and sicker, every year. It's not, we're not getting healthier. And I do want to talk about that, because what I don't understand is, like, Loma Linda, which is in California, they're obviously they're doing something correctly, but with all of this information and like all this happening, how is it that the businesses here are just getting, and it's also like people are doing more and more things and they're getting sicker and more obese? Why do you think that is?
I think number one, it's our food environment. Back in 1980, only about 15% of Americans were suffering from obesity, and now we're up to 45%. And that's not because people have lost self-control or they don't have discipline or there were better diets back in 1980. We do know that there are about 20 times more fast food restaurants, and over 55% of all retail outlets, from the place you get your tires changed to where you buy your diabetes medicine, force you to route through a gauntlet of salty snacks and packaged sweets and sugar sweetened beverages. And we're genetically hardwired to crave those foods. And traditionally, it was hard to get those foods. And now all of a sudden you can't escape them. So our genes take over. Also, about 70% of all packaged foods contain high fructose, which we know is in sugar. There's all of these highly processed foods that are very calorically dense, but nutritionally bankrupt. So we eat this food, we don't feel satiated, and we want more food. So we end up craving food, even though we've eaten too many calories. So those two things combine. And quite frankly, I think this whole superfood industry is misleading people too.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's just the packaged goods. Like, I think by now, even if they're eating French fries or fast food and packaged goods, I mean, I think people intellectually know it's not great. But I'm actually talking more about that other area, right? Like in my world, because every day there's a new healthy snack that has none of those ingredients that you mentioned, right? Organic, non-GMO. We were laughing earlier about something else, right? And then how all these people use all those taglines are indicated on these packaged goods. Okay. But yet people, it's not changing how people's health is. That's number one, the food. Number two, it's not just the food. Like I said, the smart tech about tracking your sleeps and the cryotherapies and the vitamin drips and everything else. Like with all of that stuff, it's not, there hasn't been an uptick in us living longer necessarily, or us being healthier. In fact, you're right. Like that's what I mean, people have done a really good job at like marketing, right? Yeah. But that doesn't, like, in your experience, I guess my question is, do you have any statistics or research based on those things, like within the wellness health space of what, because longevity as itself is a humongous industry. Forget about everything else. Do you have any statistics or anything you can share that like does not count? It's counterintuitive, saying if you do red light and you do, the sauna and you eat organic, there's like a 1% chance you'll be living longer. Do you have anything like that, or it doesn't make a difference at all? Do you have anything about that kind of niche market?
I can tell you for sure there's no pill, there's no supplement, there's no hormone therapy, there's no superfood that will reverse, stop, or even slow aging. It's all marketing, and it's all basically bullshit.
Wow.
When you think of it, these people, these purveyors, their goal is to make money. None of them are nonprofit organizations, scientifically rigorous, that are really trying to help you live longer. They're trying to package and market and sell you something that will help you. Well, they're trying to make you believe that these products are going to help you live longer or be healthier. And there's two big problems with them. First of all, most of them contain sugar, and most of them aren't all that healthy to begin with, or any healthier than the whole food plant-based version of what you should be eating. And secondly, the way we're hardwired, we simply don't stick to things for a long time. If you look at the recidivism curves for diets or for exercise programs, for even taking supplements, we're good for about 6 months. We can keep our focus or our discipline or our presence of mind for about 6 months, and then we always fall off. And when it comes to longevity, unless you're doing something for decades or a lifetime, forget about it. It's not going to help you. There's nothing you can do this week, this month, or for the next 6 months. Nothing you can eat or pill you can take. Nothing you can do short of not dying that's going to help you live a year longer in 50 years.
So does that mean like me doing the infrared sauna is not going to extend my life expectancy necessarily? Or me, because again, and I'm a victim, believe me, I'm not saying I'm better, I'm part of this too, right? Like I believe, not so much the food stuff, but like, if I do the sauna and I do, if I exercise this amount every day and I do this kooky regimen, that would extend my life expectancy or help me with aging, or like anti-aging, I should say. And you're saying that all of this stuff is like a bunch of nonsense, and this is not at all related to longevity or anti-aging, and it's all just marketing and branding.
Yes, it's all marketing and branding. I would say some of those things may have a short-term positive effect on your health, or make you look better, or feel better, or maybe help you build your muscles in the short run. But it's not going to help you live longer in the long run. Because
you said something in your book that I like, my ears kind of perked up. And then I'll talk to you about what all these other places are doing. But you talked about like HGH, like human growth hormones and hormones, right? Why my ears perked up wasn't because I'm doing it, but it's because I know a lot of people are doing that to stay young, to reverse aging, right? And I want you to talk about that, because I think that what people actually think can be reversing aging and helping them is actually very detrimental. Not only is it not doing anything, it's actually detrimental.
Yeah. I mean, it was fashionable a few years ago for aging men to take testosterone.
People are still doing it more than ever.
Well, there's clinical proof that shows that your life expectancy drops. It's a little bit like putting a Maserati engine in a Model T, even though that Model T will go faster, the wheels are going to fall off in a hurry. So, we age and our hormones decrease commensurately for a reason. And just by amping our bodies up with more hormones, when your bones are more brittle and your skin isn't as resilient and you have fewer muscles and your arteries are often hardened, you set yourself up for a catastrophic failure.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting to me. I mean, so that's a great analogy, actually. So because there's so many of these things you're saying, a few years ago, I guess because I feel like I'm so in it, like almost everybody I know when they reach a certain age, they do like hormone replacement, even women, right? Like they're doing hormone. So what happens with women with hormone replacements, and not to mention just like the vanity stuff with men taking testosterone to have lean more muscle mass, but what about for other health reasons? Is it actually detrimental?
Well, I think if your doctor's telling you to take hormone for health reasons, that's beyond my pay grade. But
to your point, I'm not saying because you're a doctor, but what I think is interesting is that, there's I don't know if it's detrimental to their health necessarily, but I think it's what I found interesting is just so they can age better, basically. I'm not saying they're going to die from it. So I think that the conversation is very interesting to me in that way. Like that's why I find that when you said that in the book, my ears were kind of like, I was surprised about that.
I can tell you the longest lived people, statistically speaking, confirmed, none of them are doing this hormone therapy.
That's what I'm saying. Of course not. So let's get into it. So let's go because I know that some of them have like each place has a couple that they do different things. So can we talk about the habits then of each place and what we can glean from it?
Well, the important thing to remember is these people don't have better discipline. They're not different than you or I. They're living a longer time because they live in environments where the healthy choice is the unconscious choice. They're the cheapest and most accessible foods are peasant foods. There are time-honored recipes that have evolved for 400 or 500 years that taste delicious and are easily made, and people love them. So that's what they eat. Every time they go to work or a friend's house or out to eat, it occasions to walk. You were just telling me a minute ago, walking is the best exercise ever, and I concur with it. Actually, it's something you can do into your 90s and keeps your brain sharp, and it's easy on your joints, etc. They have gardens out back. They don't have mechanized conveniences to do their yard work and their housework and their kitchen work. So every 20 minutes, they're nudged into physical activity, which not only burns more calories than the folly of thinking we're going to sit at our desk for 8 hours, then go to the gym, which most of the time we don't go to the gym in the first place. But all those calories add up to bigger caloric burn throughout the day than thinking you can go to the gym and burn it off. But also they keep their metabolism higher for the whole day.
Right, exactly.
So the option to implode into their rooms and disappear into their handheld devices doesn't exist because they are expected to participate in the social life and the family life and show up to parties and show up to religious ceremonies. And so there's a lot less, I'm sure, our way of life will corrupt them eventually. But right now, they're not addicted to handheld devices the way so many Americans are. They have vocabulary for purpose. We know that people who can articulate their sense of purpose live about 8 years longer than people who are rudderless in life. And so many Americans, we're getting pulled in all these directions, families split up, we move. It's very hard to maintain a center and know clearly what's my position in this world, how do I matter, where can I put my gifts to work. In blue zones, it comes with mother's milk. It's the vocabulary, ikigai or plan de vida.
Well, talk about that. What is the vocabulary? I want to know exactly so we can implement it. What do they say? What do they do?
Well, Ikigai is probably the most famous. The Okinawans roughly means the reason for which I wake up in the morning. Okinawans, longest lived humans in the history of the earth.
Yeah.
They have no word for retirement. This artificial punctuation between their productive life and their life of repose. Instead, Ikigai imbues their entire adult life. So you can ask a 100-year-old what their Ikigai is, and they might be practicing a martial art and passing it down, or teaching the younger generations how to weave baskets. But there's the difference between Ikigai and Plan de Vida and the vocabulary used in Blue Zones is it's not just purpose of, I'm going to follow my own passions. There's always a service element to it, responsibility. So it's really purpose plus responsibility, because if you're not putting your purpose to work in a productive way, it's not really all that powerful.
So like which place was it that they really kind of revere the elders? Where was that?
All of them.
All of them? But there's one place specifically that was it Sard?
Yeah, I highlighted in Sardinia.
Oh, the Sardinia one, right.
Yeah. Older people, unlike America where we're obsessed with youth. I mean, you're just talking about hormone therapy, trying to maintain or regain youth. It's not something they do in Blue Zones because you don't get any credit. You get credit for making it to a 90 or 100 years old.
Exactly.
And continuing to contribute. So I joke, it's true. You go into these mountain villages in Sardinia, these old men sitting around having a glass of wine, and the poster on the wall is not the
I remember that.
Not the Sports Illustrated supermodel calendar. It's the centenary of the month calendar. So
that's so funny. I know.
It's an important attitude because older people, the definition of wisdom is knowledge plus experience. So you can be really smart and 30 years old, but you don't have the experience.
Right.
And these 90, 100-year-olds, by virtue of their age, they have this experience, and it's harnessed in Blue Zones. It's harnessed. The culinary wisdom is still the hundreds-year-old food tradition is still alive. When to plant, when to harvest, what happens if there's a drought, what happens if there are pests. Older people, grandmothers are still helping raise children, so the children are more likely to survive.
Right.
So there's this beautiful virtuous circle that has evolved over centuries that is honored instead of cast away for the newest gadget or the newest superfood or the newest supplement or whatever we lurch for in the quest for trying to retain empty beauty or, youth.
Exactly. That was my point, really, is that like we're all chasing youth, but in a very vain way, right? Like we want to, it comes down to like our aesthetics, right? But it's not actually, it's kind of contrary to really anti-aging, really, because aging gracefully, I should say, right?
Yeah.
But what I find very interesting is that like, it feels like the more self-absorbed you are, again, in the very, our culture in America here, it's actually a deterrent for longevity, right? We are also conditioned to follow your dreams, do what you want, be who you are. But that's not necessarily what overall in longevity is really good for you. It seems to me like all these places, what they have in common is like for the common good of the community, helping, having a lot of friends, socializing, like being around people that are kind of like-minded and help kind of just overall assist you with life.
That's right.
Like I think you said also, like we have less friends now than we've ever had, right? Like we have, how many friends we used to have? How many friends?
Well, in the 80s, the average American had 3 friends. Real friends, not Instagram friends, but
real friends
you can count on a bad day. We're now down to about 1.8. So is
that because of social media though?
I think so.
Yeah, I'm sure
it could be because the polarization of our political environment too. I don't really know, but the point is we should be conscious if we want to really live longer and also enjoy those years. There's a very clear lesson from people who've done it, and that is take the time, invest in quality friends, know your sense of purpose, slow down and cook your own food at home and make sure it's whole food, plant-based. If you belong to a religion, honor that, honor your family. These things, and I work for National Geographic, and the fact checkers occupy the corner offices. So everything I've distilled from these blue zones is academically underpinned. It's not just a empty observation. These are things we know contribute to real longevity.
Exactly.
And people don't hear much about them because, there's nothing I can package and market to.
I was going to say, it's not sexy, and there's no magic pill that you can make $1 billion off of.
That's right.
Right.
But it works.
Exactly. I was telling you earlier when my first book and my first company was called No Gym Required, right? And it was very common sense, right? Like, it was like, you don't need any equipment. You can just use your own body weight. And it wasn't like, I wasn't really selling a magic pill. And it wasn't like sexy enough for people to get excited for, right? Because it's like people are psychologically, I feel, are wired to like look for that magic pill now, right? Because they don't want to just accept the ease or the basics of what things are and everything. I just find like the human mind to be very interesting that way. So like you're saying basically then, one other thing I want to get into the other thing, the strategies of eating less, because I think that's a big one that people do psychologically cannot stop. Can you talk about that first? And then I was going to ask you another question. What they do, in what place was it? The strategies for eating
so
less?
the book that came out this week, the Blue Zones Challenge, the whole idea is rather than trying to make you remember what to eat, if you set up your life the right way, especially your kitchen, you can eat and your social life, I would say secondarily, eating the right way becomes natural. So eating the right way is more a function of your environment than it is your discipline or your quote unquote habits. And I can offer you this, the Cornell Food Lab tracked individuals and found that we make about 220 food decisions a day. Am I gonna salt my food? Am I gonna put ketchup on it? Am I gonna have water? Or am I gonna have juice? Am I gonna drink coffee? Am I gonna put cream on my coffee? Am I gonna eat a full plate or quit half? It goes on and on. Only about 10% of your decisions are conscious. So if I manage to engineer those conscious decisions of yours, I only get fewer than 10% of the whole problem. If I can engineer your unconscious decision so that you're mindlessly eating in a certain way, I have a much bigger opportunity to impact your health and longevity. So there's good research on things you can do. Eating off of smaller plates, we know occasions consuming fewer calories, because you taking the toaster off the counter, establishing a junk food drawer where the chips and packaged sweets, we're gonna probably bring them into our home, but we eat a lot less if we have to stoop for them or reach high for them. Having a big fruit bowl in the middle of your table, getting rid of the TV in your kitchen. These all are evidence-based ways to reduce your caloric consumption and also get rid of the shitty calories, and so you have room for the better calories.
But wasn't there something else about how they have a prayer so they can only eat 80% of the, so they're stopping when they're 80% full? Like, I thought that routine.
Yeah. So you're thinking of the Okinawan adage "hara hachi bu," which
what you said, yeah,
which is in tone like a prayer. I think the sort of other religious traditions that say grace before a meal achieves kind of the same things, but
really, I don't. If I say a prayer before I eat, I wouldn't just naturally stop eating at 80%, unless I'm consciously doing it for that reason.
Yeah, I think at a certain point they're just saying it. But the point being is you're slowing down. You're putting some punctuation between your busy life and, okay, I have food, I'm grateful for it. Take a breath, now I'm gonna eat. And I think it favors, in Sardinia and Icaria and Costa Rica, they're saying a religious prayer usually, but there's they don't just motor into their meal or not eating with one hand on the steering wheel. They're doing it intentionally. And it takes about 20 minutes for the full feeling in your belly to reach your brain.
Right.
So if you're eating slower, either because there's some intentionality or some gratefulness, there's a better chance that you're going to get that signal that, oh, I'm full.
True, but I feel like even in where we live, right? Like we hear that. We hear like eat with intention, don't eat in front of the television, have gratitude, but that's not slowing down the people's the obesity rates and what people are actually doing. It becomes, like you said, it becomes like autopilot and you're not really paying attention. So I'm interested in, well, I'm not sure, I don't even know if you have the answer, but that doesn't seem to be the fact or the case in the blue zones, right? Like they say the prayer because they don't want to be eating. They're much more, their intention is for the 80% to stop when they're 80% full, but it works. And so I guess it's because you're doing so many different things in tandem, like what you're eating, the community around. You're not focused on the food as much maybe as you would be here.
So the traditional Okinawan diet until about 1980 was mostly sweet potatoes. They were eating purple sweet potatoes, 8 times more tofu. They were about 98% vegan diet until probably 1980. So, you can, if you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, you can eat as much as you want, and they're.
Well, you still can gain weight though.
I don't think so on a whole food plant-based diet.
What? I mean, I think you can, because it's a lot of like.
Well, take Okinawans. Their typical meal is this goya champuru, which is made with tofu and daikon and bitter melon and a number of other vegetables, and it's stir fried lightly with a little bit of oil. And the meal comes in front of you, and it's looks like a compost pile. It probably has 5 times the volume of a hamburger and fewer calories than a hamburger.
No, that's
so you could eat until you can just feel stuff, but you don't have that many calories, but it's nutritionally dense. I don't think you can get fat on a whole food plant-based diet.
Well, I can, because
tell me what you eat.
Okay, because I have a ravenous appetite, and so for me, protein is what fills me up, right? So I've tried being a vegan. I've tried, not because I've tried to do the vegan diet. I've tried to have a plant-based diet, but I just don't feel like satiated. I feel like I'm like craving protein. So I'll end up eating like 10 times the amount of a carbohydrate, which then of course is not good for me anyway, but eating that much of it. Right. Well, it's all about portions.
The whole protein thing so irritates me. Because
I know. I saw your face. You're like, oh.
Well, if you look at the CDC,
right,
the average American consumes about twice as much protein as they need, and protein after you get enough is actually bad for your organs.
Right, it is. That's true.
So number one. Number two, if you're eating 2/3 of a cup of lentils, you're getting more protein than you are from 2 eggs, and the problem is, I would argue that you didn't get satiated because someone didn't teach you the right way to cook whole food plant-based.
100% true. But that's 100% true. I think most people don't know.
So if you take, I wrote a Blue Zone Kitchen, which was, I gathered all the recipes from the longest of people.
I gotta get that. Can you send me one?
It was, we'll get you one. It was #1 New York Times bestseller, #1 Wall Street Journal, #1 Amazon. It just killed it. Not because, there are nice pictures in that, but because these are authentic. These are authentic recipes from people who've achieved the outcomes we wanted. And I challenge you to show me somebody who eats a whole food plant-based diet, not packaged superfood crap. Who's overweight?
Okay, give me a day in the life. Like, tell me what you eat. You wake up at what time? Because look at you, you're very lean. You're 120, but you look like you're like 30. And what do you do? What's a day in the life of you? What have you kind of like gleaned from all of this that you now kind of integrate into your life?
Yeah, first of all, I sleep until I'm done sleeping, because that's super important. Longest of people sleep between 8 and 9.5 hours a day. Number two, I start slow. So I like to read in the morning and stretch. And then I might go take a walk, or I have coffee. Coffee is one of the indulgences that you can enjoy without worrying about it. Number one source of antioxidants in the American diet. I usually eat a savory breakfast. I have a recipe for minestrone, a Sardinian minestrone.
You were saying that earlier. What is that? What is that?
So it's 3 beans, it's carrots, celery, onions, garlic, red pepper, olive oil, potatoes, tomato, but it's slow. I use an Instapot, so it's. I wrote an article recently for National Geographic on the diets of longevity and talked to, I think, all the best dietary experts in the world. And I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, one of the biggest things Americans overlook is fiber. And fiber is way more important than protein. And the standard American diet, chips, burgers, pork chops, pizza, almost no fiber in that. You have about 100 trillion bacteria in your gut, weighs about 8 pounds, biggest organ in your body. You feed it the right thing, it produces something called short chain fatty acids, which keep your immune system finely tuned, keep your inflammation in check, governs your mood. The only thing those healthy bacteria eat is fiber. So if you're eating a standard American diet, you're starving those bacteria and they go to work at your intestinal lining. You often get leaky gut disease. It's a mess. You eat this minestrone for breakfast. You get about 25 strains of fiber. By the way, you have about 1,000 strains of bacteria in your gut. Many of them like different types of fiber. So having this rainbow of fiber is about the best thing you can eat. Plus it's chock full of micronutrients and complex carbohydrates. And by the way, when you mix the barley and the beans together, you get a whole protein. So there's more protein in my minestrone than there is in a 1/4 pound of steak. And it's a lot healthier without the hormones. And I'm completely satiated from that. And then
you're right. When you combine the beans with the grain, that makes a full protein.
Yeah,
that's much
but
more
even
satiating.
Greens have full protein. It's the whole meat and egg industry has hijacked protein. It's just another micronutrient they use to market to get you to buy their product. If you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, you're going to get all the protein you need. But it's just the trick is how to cook it to make it taste good. So I've been maniacally focused on that for the past couple of years.
So is that okay? So that name some other things that you think is very. You said that's in the book though. By the way, that's in the Blue Zone Kitchen. Okay, name something else that the rest of your day. So you have that for breakfast later on during the day. So you're not. Do you intermittent fast or you don't intermittent fast? Or do you believe in that? Do you think that's?
I believe in that. I think it's a good idea to get all your calories in 8 or 12 hours, something like that. Leave your digestive system, because if you're eating for 16 hours a day, you're probably snacking, eating crap. Yeah. So, once you get used to, 5 or 6 o'clock, that's your last meal. Once you get used to it, you don't get hungry anymore.
Well, then then go on. So you have the soup. What else do you eat? What else do you do? So then you go for your walk. How about the gym? What do you think of the gym?
I think if you enjoy going to the gym, you should go to the gym. I think the trick though, especially, once you get beyond, your single years and you're trying to buff up and get laid, if you want to condition yourself for the long run, you should be doing low intensity physical activity every day. And the trick to that is doing something you enjoy. So what is that usually for people? Walking with a friend, because you get to talk, you don't even feel the pain. Pickleball.
My mom loves that.
The sport that has the highest life expectancy is actually tennis. Believe it or not, golf. People who golf have a pretty high life expectancy.
Right, because it's that social social element.
And you enjoy it. And people get obsessed with CrossFit or hot yoga or whatever the current fad is, and they do, or running marathons, and they do it for a year, and then they're sick of it. They don't look forward to it anymore, or they overdid it and they wrecked their joints, and then it's a spiral down. So doing gentle, regular physical activity, I think, is I know is the key. I know it works for the longest of people in the world.
Okay, let's go into so let's just go into some other things other things that they've done. So we know socializing is super high on the list, community building, mostly a whole plant-based diet. The other thing was the religion part that I found interesting, because in one of the places you were saying, and this might have been from the TED Talk, I don't know, for the book, it's all merging together, about taking 24 hours a day, right? And
a week,
and doing the Shabbos, or that's what I say, but the Sabbath for those who are not Jewish. And they also, that was a really, really big habit that showed to be really helpful in increasing longevity in life. So my question is, so that's the way I heard you say it. It sounded like it was like what we call the Jews like Shabbat, right? 24 hours of no phones, no nothing. You just kind of like veg, like you don't watch, no electronics. You just kind of like communicate, talking to people in person. And why I'm asking you this is, why wasn't Israel or a blue zone?
Well,
where was that, by the way, that you wrote that?
The Seventh-day Adventists. And by the way, I think it's a great practice for people to have that 24-hour Sabbath or Shabbat for several reasons. One, you tend to slow down and de-stress. It's time to focus on your higher power. You tend to focus on your family, your social connections. And the most important thing is, people who observe these do it forever. They do it for the whole life. It's not one of these fad things.
Right. It's
you do it every Saturday. So, the big element that all these other gimmicks to get you healthier, live longer, none of them think about how you keep people doing it for long enough. And Sabbath and Shabbat work because you do it all the time.
Exactly.
And there's a social component that makes you do it. Why isn't Israel living a long time?
Or why wasn't that a blue zone? I was wondering when I read that. I'm like, oh, it's interesting because
it could be because there's higher infectious disease there. It could be because it's an amalgam of traditions and maybe not a unified. There may be a higher mortality rate from violent crime. I don't really know why for sure, but they don't. They don't eat a whole food plant-based diet. There tends to be a lot of meat and schmaltz and these other.
That's true. The diet's not there for sure. You're right.
And that.
Trust me, I know.
That could very well.
You're right. So it's basically not one habit by itself. It's doing everything together.
It's a cluster of mutually supporting.
Yeah.
So it's people are eating mostly a whole food plant-based diet. They're moving every 20 minutes. Their life is underpinned by purpose, and that's what helps them keep doing these things. They have a social circle that are reinforced, and they live in a place where the healthy choice is the easy choice. So these 5 factors sort of support each other to keep people doing the right thing and avoiding the wrong thing for long enough so they're not developing diabetes, heart disease, certain types of cancer, dementia, most of which are avoidable. And those are the things that are shaving the dozen years off our life expectancy.
And in all these places, in these blue zones, are they even getting these diseases, or they're getting them at a very low rate?
They're getting them at a very low rate. They prove to us that these diseases are almost completely avoidable. The island of Icari has 10,000 people, and there's only 3 known cases of mild dementia. In the United States, if you hit 85, there's about a 60% chance if you're a woman that you're suffering from dementia.
Yeah.
Okinawa has about 1/6 the rate of heart disease, 1/6 the rate of breast cancer. So, our healthcare system incents for sickness. You have to remember, if you incent for A and hope for B, you're going to get disappointed. So how do you make money in healthcare? Well, you make money if you're a pharmaceutical company and people run out and buy your prescription. You make money if you're a doctor or a doctor's office and sick people come in for a procedure or or you make money if you run a hospital and people rent a bed and get all the services.
Right.
Nobody makes money if you stay healthy.
Right.
So lo and behold, we have one of the least healthy populations in the developed world, and we spend exponentially more than everybody else. About $3.7 trillion this year we'll spend mostly on avoidable diseases, but there's no incentive to keep us healthy. My company, the Blue Zones, we got paid by an insurance company to go into cities and change the defaults and the nudges to lower the obesity rate, therefore raising life expectancy. And to my knowledge, we're the only population health company that actually gets paid for keeping people healthy, not for trying to mop up the mess after it's been going for decades.
So I was going to ask you, so with all this information, everything that you've all the stuff that you've learned, how are you implementing it into America? Obviously you said you have a company that does it, but so what's the process? What do? You go into a place and do what? Who do you speak to? Because what are you looking for?
Well, if you Google Blue Zones projects, we're been hired by 50 cities, including Fort Worth and Naples, Florida, and several places in California, Salinas, and the beach cities. And we have a team that comes in and works there for 5 years, and we work with city government to change food policy to favor whole plant-based food over fast food and junk food, to favor the pedestrian over the motorist, to favor the non-smoker over the smoker. So there are best practice policies out there that have been implemented elsewhere. We have just aggregated them all and we present them to city council in this consensus way where they can easily identify them and implement them. Number two, we have a Blue Zone certification program for schools, restaurants, grocery stores, workplaces, and churches. So we can usually get a third to half of all those places certified. And when they certify, that means they're changing their policies and designs to favor more movement, more healthy eating, more purpose, and more social connectivity. And then a third squad gets about 15% of people and gets them to take our Blue Zone challenge. And again, we're not trying to get them to change their behavior. We get them to adjust their social circle so there's healthy people in it, to go in their house and optimize their house so the healthy foods are easier. So we're not trying to rely on people's discipline or self-control, which is a limited commodity.
Right.
We're changing their environment, and it's working.
It is working. So how much has it worked? Do you have any numbers or statistics?
So Fort Worth, Texas, about 1 million people hired us, Texas Health Systems, Texas Health Resources, the hospital system. And we worked there for 5 years. And in 5 years, we lowered the obesity rate by 6%. We lowered the smoking rate by about 9%. And that occasioned about $250 million in healthcare costs per year. And for every year going forward. And my company just gets a percentage of the savings. So that's
wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, and we're actually keeping people healthy, not making money off of them when they get sick, which is the healthcare system.
Right, it's the opposite. So then why are more places not doing this? Number one. Number two, well, that's number one. Why are more places not doing this?
Because there's no reimbursement for it. No, hospitals get reimbursed by Medicare and so forth, and it's not the way our healthcare system is set up.
So can you reach out to a city, or you have to wait for them to reach out to you? Who is the person that you're even who's your point person at these places?
We've had 400 cities come to us, and Miami, we're actually working with Miami right here, right now. They reach out to us, and we actually audition them. We don't have the capacity to do every city in America. So unless the mayor, the city council, the Chamber of Commerce, the city council, the superintendent of schools, they all have to spend time with us, understand what we're doing, and sign a pledge that they're going to get behind it, or we don't come into the city.
Really?
Yeah.
And so what do you look for certain things to make sure that they will do this? What do you do you give them a list of things that they have to
Yes. So with city government, we're going to take them through these policy bundles that I talk to, and we tell them these are the bundle. These are among the policies we expect you to pass. Is this something you can get behind? You don't have to pick 6 of them right now, and if they say, oh, it sounds like nanny state to me, we say, well, okay, we can't help you. But if they say, yeah, I have an open mind and I looked at your evidence and it's strong, yeah, it's something I could get behind. If they say yes, then we do it. We go for schools. We have this Blue Zone certification for schools, and we give them a menu of about 30 things schools can do, like get rid of soda machines, don't have your athletic field sponsored by Coca-Cola, no eating in hallways and classrooms. There's all kinds of evidence-based things. And we ask the superintendent, is this something your district will work towards? And if they say yes, we check the box. And if they say no, we check another box. And if there's enough no's, we don't come into the city because we can't be effective.
Right. And then who's paying for all of this?
Usually the Blue Cross Blue Shield plan or the hospital system or a nonprofit foundation in the city. It should be the government paying for this.
Right, right.
But we don't pay for health in this country. We pay for sickness.
I know. And do you think that's going to, why is this, and this is a lifelong question, but why is it not changing? All of this information, all of this evidence-based stuff that we now know, why are we still, in America, in Canada, it's not like this, but it's not like there hasn't been any kind of uptick or change in a positive way.
It's the same reason why we still drink sugar-sweetened beverages, knowing that's the number one source of fructose in the American diet. We still eating junk food and eating bacon and all these things because there are enormous business interests that and lobbyists and advertising that keep us believing one thing when another thing is really true.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I got to wrap it up with you. Is there anything else that I have not? Your book is coming. Well, now let me just say that this, Dan's newest book launches now, and it is the Blue Zone Challenge. And what is that? Can you just talk about that for 2 seconds?
Yes, the Blue Zone Challenge represents 20 years of work, and it's a 4-week program that takes people by the hand into their houses and their kitchens and their work lives and helps them set up their surroundings, evidence-based ways to set up their surroundings so that the healthy choice is unconscious. Mm-hmm. Because we know about 60 million people will make New Year's resolutions this January 1st, and over 80% of them they'll be forgotten by Valentine's Day. So this is an evidence-based program to set up your life so that you'll be healthier for decades. And it's already a number one bestseller on Amazon.
Already?
Yeah.
It hasn't even dropped yet. Doesn't it drop today?
It dropped today, yeah.
Oh, and did it become a bestseller again today? Did it become a bestseller today?
Yeah, it's already a bestseller.
God, you're like a machine over there.
Well, it sounds like a machine, but it took me 20, like most overnight successes,
Exactly.
It took me 20 years.
Can I even ask you how you got, I mean, I know you got to wrap it up, and that's why I was like trying to get everything out, but how did you even get into this world? How did you become an explorer like this with National Geographic? How did you even do this? Like, why? How? Is that too much of a question for like 2 minutes?
No, I mean, I would say that's my purpose or ikigai. I set 3 records for biking across 5 continents, and then I set up a company that solved mysteries. We had a huge following, and we had a school product where I had 14 scientists and photographers and videographers, and we travel the world solving mysteries. And one of the mysteries we stumbled upon was Okinawa, Japan. This is 21 years ago. Had the longest disability-free life expectancy in the world. And that just became the mystery I was most obsessed with.
Wow.
Because it has ramifications for me, it has ramifications for the healthcare world, and it has ramifications for everybody listening right now. And we know there are people who have done it better than everybody else, and it's just been my kind of mission at distilling that down, making sure there's scientific credibility to it, and putting it to work in America.
How do you even like how do like logistically, so what, like you show up in a place and like how do you even get the information, like, and how do you put two and two together, right? Like, all right, so what you're observing all of these things. Okay, these people, there's a lot of people over 100 here, and are you just asking like a ton of people what they're doing every day, or what's the process?
The process first is hiring world-class demographers to make sure these places are really producing longest lived people. So we verify ages.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of places debunked, like the Vilcabamba Valley of Ecuador and the Hunza Valley of Pakistan and the Caucasus. None of those are longevity hotspots, but they still have some mythical. Then once you establish it, and then I work for National Geographic, so we talk to the scientists that study those areas, and often, that longevity began 100 years ago with the, if you want to know what a 100-year-old did to live to 100, you have to know what they're doing as little kids and teenagers.
Right.
So I'll talk to historians. I talk to the geneticists. I talk to the people who study diets in these areas. I pull the dietary surveys that have been done, so I know what people were eating throughout the decades. I talk to the physicians who treat the older people to explain these things. So there's this whole sort of multidisciplinary cluster of scientists that study these populations. They don't realize they're studying for longevity, but their observations are directly then mapped to longevity. So it's my job to pull that pastiche together and distill it down.
You're talking to a lot of people.
Hundreds of people.
Yeah. Oh my God, you must be exhausted. No wonder you want to be alone when you get home. And so then you take all that information. So what's next? Do you find other places that are sprouting up that are going to be the next, maybe that like they're taking this information and then, emulating it in other zones, or is it still the same zones? I mean, this was done a while ago, right? And you're just constantly.
Yeah, I'm finding that, standard American diet is notoriously bad for everybody. But if you go back about 100 years and you look at the traditional ethnicities in the United States, usually the darker ethnicities, quite honestly, they were eating a very healthy diet, which I suspect is blue zone. So I'm working on a book about the diet in America about 100 years ago. And I think we'll find it's a blue zones diet.
Really? Oh, I love that. Okay, and then is there anything? Okay, I'm going to wrap it up because I know you're going to run. But one other fast question: how's the tourism in these places? Is it now like skyrocketed over there? Like, are people going there by the heaps and bounds? Because you've made you've kind of helped promote these places for this stuff.
Yeah. So Costa Rica annoyingly uses blue zones all over the place for junky stuff, but hotels and resorts, they have nothing to do with blue zones. But Japan, Okinawa has a nice longevity tourism industry now. Ikaria, there's a great place called Thea's Guest House. If you really want to experience a blue zone, just Google Thea's Guest House in Ikaria. And in Sardinia too, there's museums coming up. And what's nice about it is longevity tourists, at least blue zones tourists, they tend to be respectful and educated. They're interested. They know there's no silver bullets, so they're absorbing the nuances and bringing them home. And I'm pretty proud of that. And it's good for the people there. Right,
because the economy, I'm sure, is getting much better. All right. Well, I think that's basically all. Thank you, Dan. I'm so sorry that we went over. I apologize again. But where could people find? Well, it's already a bestseller, but the Blue Zones Challenge, you can find it probably anywhere, right?
On Amazon is the best thing, yes. And if anybody has any questions, I'm really good at answering. My Instagram handle is @Dan Buettner. If you direct message me, I'll answer any questions you might have. And I love hearing from people.
No, that's great. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And good luck with the book. And I promise next time you come on, I won't go over and everything will be organized properly.
I kind of like the chaos.
Good. Well, I'm glad you did. At least someone did. Thank you.
Habits and hustle, time to get it rolling. Stay up on the grind, don't stop, keep it going. Habits and hustle, from nothing into something. All out, hosted by Jennifer Cohen. Visionaries, tune in, you can get to know them. Be inspired, this is your moment. Excuses, we ain't having that. The Habits and Hustle podcast, powered by Habit Nest.